Hello, hello. Hello, and good morning. I feel like I hear music coming out of my computer still, but I shouldn't. Um, this is week one, day three, Friday, of electronic literature. This is section one, so welcome, and good morning, and hello. And if you're watching and you're on Discord or Twitch, please say hello and good morning so I know who's here. That would be great. So yeah, good to see you all. I just noticed I need to switch. I have the wrong little chat window up here, so let me adjust that while you all are saying good morning. It's gonna take me a minute to pull up the little widget here. So yes, wanted to. But I have to actually make this little switch real quick. This is I'm using. I think you can see my browser. Can you? I don't know. I need to switch the widget here, and I forgot to make two of them. But I think this should work pretty quickly if it does work. So I hope you're all doing well this, cold but sunny day, right? Oh wait, that was the wrong widget. I need the chat widget, not the online widget. Where's the widget link? Weird. There it is. All right, so, oh yeah, cool. And hello to those of you saying hi on Twitch. As you noticed, I hope you noticed, I changed the there we are. Okay, good. It's just very, very small. Okay. You know what? That's still showing the wrong thing. That's still showing the wrong Discord's chat. Okay. That's annoying to me. That this is cached the wrong one. Anyway, I'm kind of mumbling to myself here, but this little widget up here is using the wrong. It's actually passing the wrong one. So let me try to refresh it again on here. It's like previewing the wrong link. Maybe if I do that, there we go. That looks better. And while I'm here, let's make the text bigger. That's probably too big. Let's do this. And this is the widget. I'm not super thrilled with this widget, but I haven't found a better option, and I am not motivated enough to try to program my own. So this is going to work for now. And there we go. That looks more or less like I wanted it to. So yeah, I can see you all saying good morning here. And of course, as you recall, this is the live stream chat widget. We'll show the channel from Discord, so anything you post there is going to appear up here, and you'll see that on the stream. Also, as you can see way over there on the bottom right, or way over there, I've got the bird cam going again. I actually saw a bird yesterday, so that was exciting, and I turned on the stream so that I could record and broadcast the fact that there were in fact two birds on the feeder at once. I haven't seen them again, but I did see it was a female cardinal and a bird that might have been a sparrow or a yellow warbler, and we were debating that, but it was still it's cool to see. And also the little one like hopped up to towards the camera, so that was pretty cool. I don't think I captured that actually broadcasting it, but it was like the camera is sort of on a ledge, so it can hop up to it. And actually the camera is built in a little house that kind of looks like a birdhouse. So it's kind of hoping that a bird might think, oh, this is a birdhouse, and then try to get in. But like instead of it being a hole, it's actually the lens for the camera. So that might be interesting just to capture if I do get to see that, where they might be like pecking at the camera. I don't know. It hasn't happened yet, but I thought it might. Okay, so today here's what I want to talk about today. I have a slideshow, and I'll share the actual slides later. But just for now, I'm going to put it on the stream. This is sort of a lecture, but I do have some questions for you at different points in the lecture. So I'll ask for feedback or ask you to answer those in Discord, and I'll try to incorporate them into the lecture here. But I want to talk about how to talk about electronic literature. I've asked you to take a look at something, specifically the 10 Lost Boys game, or hypertext, or whatever we decide to call it, by Mark Sample. And I thought it would be a good starting point. I'm not offering it as like the archetype of all electronic literature, or like the best or the worst or anything. I just think it's good, and I think it gives us some interesting things to discuss. And specifically, I want to make sure to kind of lay the foundation for how to talk about this kind of thing, which is somewhat different than how we might talk about other forms of literature. So that's the basic conceptual goal for today, but I have a few other things to talk about as well in terms of logistics for this class. Before I do that, though, I have a brief, I guess this basically amounts to a commercial, but I wanted to tell you all about something cool that I got to do last night. So I can't remember if anybody in this section was in my winter class, but I taught a class on games called Games and Culture, and we talked about video game history and theory and how to study video games like literature, basically. And one of the days of that class, I got to have a couple of guest speakers, and they were the two co-owners of this space, Reclaim Arcade. Reclaim Arcade is a side venture of Reclaim Hosting, which is the hosting company that provides the backend for UMW domains and a bunch of other things. So Reclaim Arcade is a arcade space. They opened today. I got a chance to check it out last night, and it was pretty amazing. So if you are interested in video games and video game history especially, it's a really amazing experience. So this is it. It's over in the shopping center, sort of behind. I think of it as the Goodwill. Not the Goodwill, although it is near Goodwill. I think of it as the Home Depot light on Route 3. It's like the last one. If you're going from campus towards the interstate, it's like one of, or maybe the last intersection before you enter like the interstate area. But if you turn left and then you turn left again, sort of behind that like cowboy something, it's like a restaurant. I don't know what it is, but there's usually a bunch of motorcycles there. So sort of behind that, there's Reclaim Arcade, and they've got this amazing space set up. It's kind of mysterious from the outside, but once you enter in, it's crazy. So you kind of go in through the video store. They have a space called Reclaim Video, which is essentially an art exhibit now, but it's essentially like a VHS like tape rental store, and you can borrow things. And then you go through the console living room, and that's a space that is a kind of it's something like we did at UMW. I guess it was 2015. I couldn't remember the exact date, but me and Jim Groom a few years ago set up a space at UMW on the 4th floor of the Convergence Center to be a recreation of a domestic media environment from the 1980s. So they've recreated that at Reclaim. You can walk through that, or you can hang out in it if you want. The fun thing, if you can see this picture here, this TV was set up there at the 4th floor of HTC for a while. We had several TVs, but this particular TV was funny because it actually has a remote, and you can control it with the remote, even though it's like 1983, I think, is when we figured out that one was made. But either because of the RF shielding or something about the encoding, whenever someone would use the elevator in the Convergence Center, which is frequent, this TV would turn on or off or change channels because something about I guess the elevator has some kind of RF radio frequency stuff going on in it that was being picked up by that TV as remote control signals, and so it would change the channel. It's pretty funny. Anyway, so that's there. But then you go into the arcade space. They have, I think they said 57 arcade cabinets currently working. They also have 8 or 9 pinball machines, some really excellent pinball machines. Some of them are like older pinball machines, and some of them are like new ones made to look like older things. Just a lot of fun. I got to bring my kids, and we played for a couple hours last night. You got the classics right there, as you can see in that row there. You got a few kind of newer things, mostly older things though, and it's meant to be more of like a nostalgic kind of retro space. So I had a lot of fun. They also have some kind of unusual and rare arcade machines like Battlezone and Tron. So I highly recommend it. So the way it works, you can actually even play one of their games online if they have it hooked up. There's a pinball machine you can play through. It's called Surrogate TV, but it's essentially like Twitch, and you can actually control the paddles on a pinball machine. But I don't know if they have it set up right now, but they have had it set up. Anyway, it's pretty cool. So the idea is you reserve a 2-hour block, and there's a cost for that. But then you have all the machines are on free play, so you just wander around for those 2 hours and play. So check it out. They are open now, and you have to. They have a limited, like they have a limit. Like you can't. They can't get more than 20 people in there at a time right now in terms of social distancing. So you have to reserve a spot ahead of time. But check it out. It's pretty cool. All right. So. Yeah, that was, and I'm not a business partner or anything, so I'm not, and I wasn't paid for that endorsement. I had a lot of fun, and I thought I would share it with you all. Okay, so a couple of things going on kind of logistically in the class. You may have noticed that your names, as you see them up here, are different colors. Actually, you all are kind of this purpley color. That's because I've added a role for Discord, or 2 roles for sections 1 and 2, and this lets me address each section all at once. You can also use that role. You can also mention that role. So if you want to say, hey, who else is in section 1, you can do that too in Discord. It sends you a push notification, or pops up with the 1 saying, like there's a notification, and just is a way to get your attention, or to get everyone else's attention. There will be other roles as we think about how to divide the cohorts and in terms of face-to-face, and I'll talk about that in the next couple slides, but those will also be addressable cohorts that I could or get the attention of in similar ways. So nothing you need to know, I just thought I'd explain what that is. Okay, so you do have homework today. That's in Canvas, and I have not looked at them at all yet, other than I did see, like, Canvas told me there were like 30-something submissions last time I checked, which is good. Should be like 40, I think, overall. So, that seems like that's the right idea. There's no minimum length or anything on this. It's really just to do it. And I will look at them, but I'll just grade it complete or incomplete. I'm not going to give you kind of complicated feedback unless there's some reason to, like if you were way off or you did something really inappropriate, I might respond to it. But mostly it's just going to be, acknowledging that you did it. It's really just kind of to get you thinking about something ahead of time so that when we come to class and we have a discussion or I have a lecture, you already kind of know what's going on. You already have some things to say even. So if we get to a point in a discussion and I'm saying, okay, what do you all think about blah, 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 you've already got something that you've thought about and you've written, so you could refer back to that and offer that as an answer to a question in class, for example, or just, you've already spent some time now with 10 Lost Boys. So when I talk about it, it's not totally new to you. You have some experiences of your own to think about and understand, and you're ready for it. And the homework is your way of signifying that you're ready for that discussion today, or for the lecture today. So that's the idea. These homeworks will continue almost every day, and they do kind of serve as a proxy for attendance in the sense that it kind of just lets me know that you're ready for class that day. I'm not going to be able to, it's difficult for me to kind of keep track of and actually record attendance, especially on Twitch like this. On Zoom, it's not so bad, but for Twitch, it's just, I can see all you saying hello, and that's good, and I can look back at that, and I appreciate that. But I'm not going to go on and check off exactly who's here and who's not, so because I wanted to get started on the lecture. But the homework is something that it's logged in Canvas, and it's easy for me to confirm that you're kind of keeping up with things. So that's the main idea. Again, it'll just be a complete or incomplete grade. Okay, so I do want to propose a plan for how to how to arrange our schedule in terms of the different modalities, and I appreciated all the suggestions on Wednesday when we talked on Zoom with those different plans. But I'm going to put a straw poll. I'll put it in Discord. If I think it looks like 3 of you are chatting on Twitch, and you can just type there to tell me what you want to do. Let me take a minute here. I'll type a quick thing in here, and it'll just take me a minute to type this up here. So as you hopefully recall from our discussion, there are basically 3 different modalities for this class. There's the online, synchronous, like what's going on now. There's a face-to-face option. I guess that's the 2 modalities, but what was the 3rd one? Anyway, but I want to find out how many of you actually are planning on attending face-to-face. And when I sent out the initial welcome survey, I did get the sense that many of you did want to do that. But I wanted to see, like, I'm not sure if when you answered those questions you were talking about, yes, I would be available, but maybe you meant I would be available, but I would prefer not to. You know what I mean? Like, so I wanted to get ask a similar question, but I want to see if you're actually planning to come or not. So let's see. Let me see. I'm typing a poll up here in Discord. And what's going to happen is you could. I'm going to. Hold on, I can't. I can't do this and talk at the same time. So I'm posting a message here, and then it's got two emoji that I would like for you to use to respond to this message to indicate which option you are planning to go for. So one option is fully online, the other one is face-to-face as much as possible. So I'm going to hit this here, and then I'm going to add the emoji to it, and so click the emoji that corresponds to your response, right? So there's a computer, that's for online. There's a classical architecture building, click that to respond to face-to-face as much as possible, and we'll see how these numbers play out. All right, again, this is just a straw poll, nothing to commit, and I don't even know if it's possible for me to see who's indicating which option here, but I just want to see like how many there is, because this kind of, this may change things around a little bit in terms of the next slide. So I'm seeing the votes coming in, and for those of you on Twitch, if you can type your preference in Twitch chat if you're not able to switch to Discord, or you could just switch to Discord and click to vote there if you'd like, whichever you prefer. Okay. All right, good. So looks like I've got 17, 18 votes so far, about 20 people watching, so that's probably a majority, and does give me a sense of it. And you can see if you're looking at it in Discord, it doesn't show up in the chat for some reason, but I've got currently 5 because I voted once on both. So we've got 5 that are fully online and 12 that are face-to-face as much as possible. So should be about 3 more people, but that's a pretty good sense of the distribution. So that's good. Good to know. Probably what that means is 3 different cohorts as opposed to 2, and that was kind of the number I was looking for. Is did we cross the threshold of 10 because we can't get more than 10 in the classroom? So it looks like we did. So we'll probably plan on going with what I'm going to call 3 cohorts, which is in the plan that I'll show you in a moment. And but that could still change. So we'll probably do this plan that I'm about to present for at least a month. Or maybe 2 weeks, I don't know, maybe a month, and then we'll reevaluate and see if people want to continue with that plan or modify it. Okay, so here's my proposal, and this is kind of like I think what Amber in Discord and Zoom suggested the other day. So Monday and Friday, so some of the features here, this is a 2-week pattern, as you can see here. The cohorts will be split. So we've got Monday and Friday is always online synchronous, and online synchronous could mean different things. These different modalities for online synchronous, I can talk more about those in a minute. But then on Wednesdays, that's where you have the choice, and we can be online synchronous. Some people will be working online synchronous, but not with my supervision directly. Everyone else will be face-to-face in a kind of discussion kind of space. Because what I was thinking is, like, what is the point of being face-to-face? Like, what are the things we can do when we're face-to-face? And we can have conversations and discussions, and that's something that it's hard for me to think of how to do that in a way that includes people online in that same kind of conversation, more or less, equivalently. And so I think it would make more sense to have a separate experience for people online while I'm doing the face-to-face conversations there. With whoever's there. So the idea is, like, you would be in either the blue team or the red team, and you would, if you're in blue, you would show up like this coming Wednesday. If you're red, you would show up the Wednesday after that. And and then rotate through that. And then there's an implied green team that's always online. I should have added that to the bullet points here. So that's a 2-week rotation. So it's that pattern just repeats through every 2 weeks. And I think just based on like what I want you all to do in terms of like when I plan to lecture and so on, I think this is good. I think this will work. Do you have any? Well, let me go to the next slide and then we'll see if you have any questions. So online synchronous can mean at least 3 different things. It could mean a Twitch stream like I'm doing now, and this will be days when I'm lecturing. Today is a lecture I hope will be a little interactive, but I do mostly plan to tell you things as I have been so far. And we can also use Discord, and Discord could be useful. If I'm going to look into, like, I might need to upgrade my counter and my PC a little bit. If it's viable as a way for me to stream video, then that actually could create some good options for certain days of class. So because there are certain things I might want to stream to you all that will get flagged on Twitch for copyright, and I don't know, I think they'll probably be okay on Discord, so I'm going to look into that. But also Discord can be useful just for chat, like text chat or voice chat as maybe needed. But of course Zoom is also pretty good for that too. And really, if we're going to have a video conferencing conversation, I think Zoom is probably better. Zoom has the built-in recording capabilities. It's already kind of linked into Canvas, so I think there's advantages to using it that way, like we did on Wednesday. So those would be the 3 different platforms for online synchronous conversation. But for all 3 of these, my assumption is that if you know ahead of time that Mondays and Fridays are going to be always one of these 3, I will tell you ahead of time which it's going to be, but you don't need a lot of preparation ahead of time to click a Twitch link or click a Zoom link or a Discord thing. Like, so in other words, I'm not going to go ahead and schedule these out respective to their platform that long in advance, just because I don't know, the needs for these may evolve and may change depending on how the semester goes. So in the face-to-face opportunities, in the face-to-face classes when we have them, those will be in HCC room 329. That's the room with the green chairs. There are fewer of those chairs in there right now. It's all spaced out, and there's tape on the carpet to show you kind of where you're supposed to be. This is something that you may have experienced so far. Like in last term, you may have had a face-to-face experience with the class. There are a few norms that I think we've gotten used to in these kind of face-to-face experiences. Main thing is there will be like sanitizing wipes near the door, and the idea is going to be as you walk in, pick one up, and then wipe your space down when you arrive, and then as you leave, do the same thing again. Kind of try to stay in your area, try to sit in the same seat every time, that kind of thing. So it's a little awkward. It'll be unusual for the first couple of times you do it, but I think, at least I found last semester, once we'd gone through it for a couple of weeks, it really became, it just became normal, and that's how things go now, right? You just kind of stay with it until it gets normal. Okay, do you have any questions or comments or concerns about my proposal? It looks like I'm looking at the numbers now, and we've had a few more vote for the face-to-face opportunity, so that further confirms that we're going to need to split that into 2 groups and alternate weeks of attendance face-to-face, which is fine. So, okay, so seeing no questions or comments, I'm going to move on, but if you do have questions or comments, let me know. What I will do next, and this, when I say next, hopefully by tonight, I will give you a way to join a particular cohort, like red or blue or green. Let's say, I'll give them color, I'll color code them so it's easier to keep track. That'll identify which Wednesday you would be attending. So there's actually going to end up being 6 cohorts, because for each section there's 3. There's 2 face-to-face and then the fully online. So it's going to get complicated, but hopefully I'll use color coding and role assignment in Discord, and I will give you all I'll use the group structure in Canvas to also give you that that other kind of way to identify your cohort, and then go with that. So I think in Canvas what I can do is set up the groups and then give you the chance to join whichever group you prefer, if that makes sense. Yes, it would, Amber. So Amber just asked on Discord, would meeting in person start this coming Wednesday? And yes, that's the idea. So that would be the 3rd. Okay, so good question, and that's true. Okay, so let's, any more questions, just put them in chat and I will get back to them later. But I want to move on with some content here. We go to 11 on this class, so I wanted to kind of move through this thing a little bit. So our goal for today, as I said, we want to talk about electronic literature, and we've got 10 Lost Boys by Mark Sample as an example. And this sample is, this example is a sample by Mark Sample, which is, but it's his real name, by the way. It just, turns out to actually work pretty nicely since I'm providing this sample. This is a work that I found really compelling and disturbing and interesting, so I thought it would be a good place to start. It's also really timely, unfortunately, and that's kind of what made it disturbing. So that's kind of what I wanted to talk about, why I thought it would be a good thing to talk about. That said, as I mentioned in the content warning, it does deal with and imply violence, and racism in particular. So it is a work that is, it's meant to challenge and meant to be uncomfortable. It's meant to make you feel bad. I do find it a really affecting work. Like, I feel really kind of messed up after playing it sometimes. And I've gone through it a few times, but it has a really emotional punch to it at the end, I think. So I just wanted to prepare you for that, but you've experienced it yourself already, so you kind of, hopefully you know what I'm talking about. Homework is going to be to take a look at a list of several works, and I'm so far behind on getting things ready. I have that list. I will try to give it to you. If I can't get that list together tonight, then just skip it. But I want you to look at several examples of different kinds of things so we can start plotting out and getting our sense of those differences between different forms. So in terms of forms, 10 Lost Boys is either hypertext or interactive fiction. There is kind of a murky gray area between those two terms, and it doesn't really matter which it is, but it's in that kind of ballpark. So there are other kinds of things that I want you to see as well, like generative art and digital poetry. So I'm going to give you a list of things to spend a little time with. On the lecture on Monday, I did kind of blitz through several examples, but I want to give you some links of things to actually play through or watch or experience, and again, do a similar kind of reflective homework on that. But if I'll try to get that done by like midnight tonight, but if I can't, then just skip it and I'll just lecture it on Monday. But that's the idea. That's where we're going. Okay, so first of all, 10 Lost Boys, first impressions and questions. Now, this is the kind of conversation that would work better in a classroom or even a Zoom conference, but just type it in Discord. Like, what were your overall thoughts? And you can even just go back to your reflection that you posted in Canvas if you want, and just copy and paste some things. I just kind of want to get a sense of your impression of it, because I have my own impressions. I have those impressions are based on many things about myself and my own opinions, and I'm just kind of curious where you come at this from. Yeah, sorry, I'm struggling with words. Okay, so Kira's saying combination of uncomfortable and impressed. Yeah, Riley says the interactive fiction really strengthened it. Yeah, well, that's kind of that's the main takeaway I hope for. Because I wanted to think about the interactive part of it. And thinking about interactivity means thinking about several things, I think, like culpability and also like kind of intimacy almost. So I see several people typing, and that's good. So you can either, I don't know who's typing, but I'm kind of curious to say more about that choice, like the interactiveness of it. So Patrick's saying forcing you to make the choices is important. Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, forcing, right? I mean, that's an interesting way to put it, because, you do have to make a choice in order to proceed. But of course, there is always the choice to not play at all. Like that's always there as an opportunity. But great point. Connor saying that it's when you choose to make that choice, you are in some ways culpable in what happens, right? Like you're sort of responsible for this child, right? And I think that partly explains, I think, my emotional reaction to it. I have a son, and I think about him right now. He's 8 years old, and I think the boy in this game, the Lost Boy, starts off about 8 years old, I feel like. And so it's it's really heartbreaking to think about, choices that might happen, that my son might make, or that I might inadvertently make, or lead him to, that might lead him down these really dark paths. That's the kind of thing that kind of, that's the kind of thing I'm forced to kind of think about as I play the work. And also, I haven't talked to Mark Sample about this game, but I know he has children, he has boys, and so I can only imagine that he's thinking about his own children in putting this game together. So Jessica raises a good question too, JPropes12. I don't know if you mind if I say your full name, Jessica, but the idea that it's Neverland, I think that's a really interesting question too. Right, this is 10 Lost Boys, and the Lost Boys reference Neverland from the Peter Pan stories, and there's a lot of interesting ways to read that association. So I'm curious to think some more about that. Yeah, you all are doing a great job with this discussion. Riley points out that choices, the differences, right? So that was one of my questions too, is do the choices really make a difference, and what kinds of differences? Are they sort of decorative differences, or are they fundamental, significant differences? And that's sort of interesting, right? So that's something that we could look at differently. Yeah, so Patrick, I think you're referencing the Neverland. I think you're right. I think that's one part of it. And we think of Neverland, I mean, I don't know what you know about the Peter Pan, mythos, but it's kind of weird. I mean, there's the Lost Boys cartoon show, I think on Disney. I think it's called Lost Boys or Pirates. I don't remember, but Pirates of Neverland or something it's like a kid show. And then of course there's Peter Pan in the movies. The books are weirder though, I think, and I think it's hard to explain why. They're much more violent, and it's also kind of hard to tell sometimes what's fantasy and what's real, and are they really saying that these children are killing each other? That's pretty harsh, and it's an unusual book. It kind of doesn't make sense in some ways, and so I think the idea of the Lost Boy as a person in that space is really complicated by that reference. I mean, the book is worth reading in the sense of knowing about it, but I think in a lot of ways the ideas of Peter Pan that we get from the Disney version are more coherent and equally kind of dark in some ways if you think about it. But you kind of have to think about it, whereas it's a bit more upfront with the weirdness in that. What is a child that doesn't grow up? What does it mean to fetishize childhood like that? And Hook. I mean, Andrew's mentioning that movie. That's a great movie, right? So it's it deals with that question of growing up or not growing up in a different way. Jake and the Neverland Pirates. That's right. Yeah, thank you, Lou. That's the one I was thinking of. Pretty good show, right? Okay, so I think you all are doing a great job already, kind of looking at the kinds of things that are specific to electronic literature. But let's kind of work through some things. If we think about it from kind of the outside first, and then kind of isolate the parts that are unique, I think this might be an interesting way to go through it. So if we think about a book, right? And I've just picked Peter and Wendy. That's the original title by J.M. Barrie. The fact that I've picked this one is not significant. I just picked. It just seems appropriate because of the reference. We can think of this, if we're studying this in a literature class, think about all the things that you might want to know about this book, or that you might ask, or that a professor might explain to you about this book if you were learning about this as a book, right? So we can think of this in terms of questions. What are the questions we should ask about a book? So type them in chat, and I'm going to try to actually add them to this slide. This is, it would be great to kind of write these on a whiteboard, but I don't have a whiteboard set up. So what are some of the questions, hypothetical questions you would want to know about a book to study it? And just, these can be basic questions, and I'm literally going to try and copy and paste if you type it as a question, so I can add it here and to my bullets. I'll get started too, actually, just some really basic ones, like who is the author? All right. How long is it? These are basic questions. Oh yeah, good one from Connor. When was it written? Or returned? Yeah, and Lou and Curry, you're having an interesting conversation there too. I want to get back to that as well. What are the characters? What is it about? What genre is it? Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. What is the plot or plots? Yeah. Yeah. Author's intention. And I'll mention this one, Kira. Has added this question. I think this is a question we often do ask. There's always the idea of the intentional fallacy in literature, where we try to read the work and not read what we think the author wanted to write. This is the so-called death of the author methodology that we often do in literary studies. But I do think, in fact, we do often ask that question. So you're right. What else was it? What common motifs? Yeah. And yeah, let's keep these going if you can still think of them, authors. Because I think the author's background does tell us some things about the context for the book, right? What is the setting? Right. Oh yeah, sure. So somebody mentioned names, why did they name characters this way? So this book's actually interesting in that sense because Wendy is the name of my daughter, my oldest daughter. We named her Wendy, and that name I believe was created by J.M. Barrie. And it was supposed to be like a childish mispronunciation of friend, like friendy, but it becomes Wendy. Obviously, it's also rhymes with the word of like a day like today, where the breeze is blowing a lot, so it's windy. But we didn't name our daughter that just because we liked the book or anything, but we just kind of like the name, and I kind of like the alliteration with it, so it's like Wendy Whalen. There's actually a famous ballerina named Wendy Whalen. Yeah. So Kira, I think you can take different approaches, but it's just a matter of different approaches and what those approaches give you as a critic, right? So I think if you're interested in certain kinds of criticism, like new historicism, for example, I think you definitely need to know who the author is and what they're trying to do, and even and I think also. When we're talking about genre, I think genre is a form of authorial intent. Like as an author, you set out to try to write a science fiction book, and that's a significant kind of intention, and that means that you hope your work accomplishes certain goals. So I think that's a kind of intention as well. And also, I think when we talk about death of the author, it's really just more about it's a methodological choice. So we're not literally thinking that anyone has died or that they don't exist or that their ideas don't matter. It's just we want to try to focus on what the work actually does as a thing, as opposed to some imaginary work that the author intended that never actually came to be. It's a methodological difference. So now Bella's actually asking a question that actually gets to our work here at 10 Lost Boys, why these choices. But actually, I'm going to leave that here because this slide is more about the classic literary work. Okay, so we've got a few things, and I've started this, but let me kind of just riff on what you all were talking about there. We talked about metaphor, symbolism, plot, character, setting, genre. Let's see if there's anything else. Interpretation, I think, would be another thing we could talk about. These are properties of literature. Like these are elements that we are interested in trying to identify and explain when we do the work of literary criticism or just literary analysis. Like that's what we're after. We're after these things, and we can think even more deeply. Like we think about. We could also be looking at things like typography, like paper weight. These are all different things that we might determine to be significant, and which of these things we focus on will depend in to some sense on which intellectual lens, which critical lens we're applying to a book. Certain points of view will start with looking at the typography and the layout of the pages, like textual criticism might look at that, or I don't know, I guess like a feminist reading might look at characterization or plot. I mean, there's all kinds of different ways that you can think about different points of view influencing the kinds of things you choose to focus on. Like I was just saying to Kira a minute ago, like this is the idea that you might be interested in the author's point of view or their intentions. Like that's going to look at it in a new historical context. Like that's the kind of approach you might take there. Okay, yeah. So this is good, and we could keep going, but I think we could keep going. we could keep going, I think, but I assume you get the idea so far in terms of analyzing literature. So the point I want to make is that when we talk about electronic literature, we can certainly talk about all of those things, like literally everything that we've mentioned so far and that you all have mentioned in the chat that I didn't manage to get in. And yet we also have some questions that we can ask that are specific to digital literary artifacts. For example, what program did the author use to create it? In this case, Mark Sample used a program called Twine, but he also used I guess it's called a story format, but it's really like a macro set or a plugin for Twine. I think he used SugarCube. There's a couple of them, but he probably used SugarCube because SugarCube lets you do the complex stuff with variables that he's doing there. What programs do I need to use in order to experience it? So this is a slightly different question because the platform Twine, you don't need to own Twine in order to play a Twine game. You just need a web browser in this case. So this is going to be something that impacts your experience of it. You might have a slightly different experience in Firefox versus Chrome versus Internet Explorer. Also, the way the fonts are rendered will look a little different depending on your computer. So if those are the things we're interested in, if you go back to those questions, like if we're interested in typography and layout, those are things that we have to address with respect to the differences that might be made by your specific computer. And also, like, of course, anything that the programmer did to it. We can also talk about things like duration, like a literary work lasts as long as you choose to read it. In this case with Twine, this work is probably 5 to 10 minutes. That's a sense of its duration. But you can also think of this in terms of the multitude of choices. Like he says in the note at the beginning, there are over 10 billion options. Are you going to look at all 10 billion? Absolutely not. But just knowing that that's available gives us a different sense of its scope. Okay, so what is the file size of the work? This is a software object, so it has the properties of software like file size, file format, and so on. What modalities are used? So we've got text, we've got images a little bit, but mainly it's like visual typography, like things move in and out of view and that kind of thing. But mainly, and significantly, we also have audio in this case. So many of you commented on how the audio sets the tone, and that does a lot for this work. So that's absolutely something we should include in talking about it. Are the choices significant or exploratory? And that's something that I think Riley was talking about. You can make lots of choices, but as you play it, you start to see in some ways that your choices are really constrained. Like you're really ultimately only given bad options, and so that's a purposeful choice here. So when we look at this, we can ask why did the author program it that way, but we can also ask what is the impact of that on me as a reader? Where does that put me in relation to the work? Am I in control of what's happening, or am I just along for the ride? And those are different factors that can influence our interpretation and our takeaway ultimately. I think I'm seeing some of you all kind of running with that a little bit. So yeah, I'm glad to see that in Discord. Are there aspects that are pre-scripted or some things that are emergent? In this case, everything I think is pre-scripted. Like it's pretty much an experience that is going to be pretty similar for almost everybody. But we could imagine a work, and it's possible for things to be more randomized or more kind of emergent in how they behave. In this case, this one tends to be pretty, I don't want to say linear because you do have all those options, but it's linear it's like I'm trying to think of it. It's like a forest moving in one direction, if that makes sense. It's like a forest marching down a plain. I don't know if that makes sense, but I kind of like that image in my mind. Okay, so then ultimately, what are you expected to do here? And that verb can be very significant too. So are we clicking or are we deciding? And those are, two different things. Like you could click through a slideshow. Is that a significant action? Probably not. But here we can click through different decisions or decision sets, but are we really making significant decisions or not? And this isn't to say that either of those is good or bad. It's just that these give us a different position and a different way to evaluate what we think of this work and kind of how to interpret it and explain its impact or meaning for us. So yeah, and then ultimately, how different will each one of this be? This has to do with, these are, again, if it's more randomized, they're going to be very different. But even this one, I'm pretty sure mathematically there is basically essentially 0% chance that any of us experienced or the same series of choices, that we made the same boy, basically. It's possible, but very, very small chance. And that's an interesting aspect of this work as well. All right, so in answering some of those questions about this work, we can talk about it in this way. It's hypertext or a game, and distinction doesn't really matter exactly, but we do expect different things from hypertext works versus games, and so that's probably worth keeping in mind a little bit, but not really important in terms of deciding yes, it's this or no, it's not. The software I would say is Twine. That's the software that Mark Sample used to create it. He uses it to distribute it. It was created as part of the 10th anniversary of the Twine platform, so it was published along with some other works that were trying to do that. And it was, it uses different media and different modality. So I see we're running out of time. I'm going to actually try to not play it, but actually get under the hood of it a little bit. To show you how we can start analyzing this. Like we can do this like you all are doing already in Discord, and that you've done your Canvas comments, I assume, just like responding to it, like just responding to it as a reader. But we can also access this and analyze it as a work of software as well. So let me show you how, and this, hopefully I can do this relatively quickly. I'm going to try to upload this into the Twine editor and show you what this looks like under the hood. In other words, show you what Mark Sample would have typed, like the actual code he wrote. And it just takes me a minute here to, I set this up on my other computer to prove that it would work, but not on this one that I'm streaming on, so bear with me for a moment here. Twine is generating HTML, so that's another platform to bear in mind and think about in terms of affordances and opportunities and so on. But one of the nice things about HTML is that it is open source, unless you've taken some significant efforts to obfuscate it, which this does not. In other words, that means that if you are viewing a web page, you can view the source of that web page and see how it was coded to make it do the things that you see it do. And that's the case here as well, although we have to also upload it into Twine. Some of you may know Twine. I wanted to show you this because this is actually much more robustly coded than most Twine games. But we can actually learn a lot about it just by exploring it. Twine is a platform where normally you create passages and then link the passages together by writing text. Write text that links. When you use words like, when you put square brackets around something, it makes a link. And so this is the basic operation of Twine. And you can see that this is happening in Mark's text as well. But he's also got, he's also got quite a lot of code here because he's using these macros, and I think it's sugar cubes. So you can actually look at this as code, and this looks much more consistent with just like code. So this is more codey code than Twine normally is. So if you look at it, these are the actual options that the boy may be named. So when you first start it, you choose a boy, and then it says that there are others as well. Those lists are generated by pulling a random subset of this much longer list. And I ran a count on these. This is 148 possible boys here. And similarly, whenever it chooses where that person is from, it's got this very long list of options, which is over 1,000. So just right there between those two choices already, we've got 147 times 1,000 as the number of possible combinations of boy to city in that sense. So that's 147,000 options already in the first two slides. And then it gets more complicated from there as you choose the different things. So each set of choices multiplies the total number of possible choices. So like if you get to, I haven't checked, but if you get to it and there's like 10 different toys that they can play with, then that multiplies. Now it's 1,470,000 options. So that's how we get to 10 billion possible configurations in terms of experiencing this story. So I just wanted to show you that. I don't know if that explanation made sense, but I think so. Bella's question actually that was asked earlier is sort of one of the questions I think is interesting about this, which is, it's 247. Sorry, I couldn't remember. Why are there so many possibilities, right? Like, why give you the 10 billion possibilities? What kind of thing does that do to our experience? And I think I'm gonna have to leave the question there hanging because I have an answer or I have an idea, but maybe I will have to let you ponder that, right? Because he could have written this with 10 choices and then just made you pick 10. He could have just thought of 10 names off the top of his head. He could have just thought of like 10 cities off the top of his head. But instead, he's got a list of 1,000 plus hometowns, 247 possible first names for this boy. what is the impact of that? And we can think of that in terms of either way, like what is the impact of that on your experience, but also what does that help us understand about Mark Sample's intentions with this and kind of how we interpret it overall. So this class went by pretty fast. It's 11 o'clock, and this is when we're supposed to end. So I will be wrapping up shortly. But if you have any thoughts, I guess I wanted to respond to one point that I see, and I'm kind of like, I am kind of interested in responding to a couple of points in here as we wrap it up here. But I think to go back to what I think Lou and someone else were talking about, maybe Patrick, maybe Curry, but the question is like, ultimately, does this want us to kind of feel bad for white supremacists or try to feel like they didn't have a choice in this? And I mean, everyone's entitled to their interpretations based on the evidence. I think that is kind of the risk in a way, right? Because we have to read this game against the reality of the real world damage of white supremacy, which has become incredibly visible over the last weeks. This game was made before January 6th, so game was made last summer, I think. So you see, so Mark Sample's not necessarily referencing that, but he is counting on us to experience a kind of dissonance. Like he's kind of counting on us to understand how horrible the situation is, to understand that white supremacy is terrible, and yet at the same time try to understand how someone would get sucked into that. And I think the ultimate critique he's making here is not. I mean, the takeaway that I have for this, and of course you can have your own, but I don't take away like we should feel bad for or try to understand or like sympathize with white supremacists. I certainly don't. I don't think that's a valuable thing to do. I think it's more like understanding the risks that we currently that still exist. So to understand, especially for male children, for boys, because I have a son, like what are the dangers, what are the harms, what is the the tragedy, the tragic kind of consequences that are possible or at risk of them experiencing based on the reality of the environment that exists. And so the environment that exists is what I think Mark Sample is really critiquing. So the way that sort of the 4chan or Reddit or Gab kind of community building, that kind of toxic community is really the problem that lures people into this. And so what can we do to change that or keep people that we care about away from it? Like that's the kind of thing I'm interested in seeing here. So, but I do think at the same time, I think white supremacy is a tragedy. Like the fact that people believe these things is tragic and sad. And so I think, I'm not saying we should excuse them or feel like, oh, too bad for them, as to paraphrase Lou's comment, except that, what else, what have we lost? Like what have we lost because of this? Not just, we've lost them, but we've also lost the people that they do harm to. And as a society, we're much worse off because of it. So, what do we do about it? This game doesn't offer answers, but it helps us or reminds us to think about the problem. And sometimes that's the best thing literature can do, which I don't know if that's a good ending for today or not, but that's kind of where I am. I think another point to make too is just the idea that I think what was I going to say? Yeah, so the idea of like the range of this, the idea that there's 10 billion, I think it helps us understand that there's a sense of scope and specificity. So like the idea is, sorry, I'm saying different things. Oh, sorry. The idea that like if you do the certain options, right? I mean, it is actually possible. Actually, let me see. I have the list up here. So it is actually possible to choose a lost boy, like given the set of options that are coded in here. Your boy could be named Zachary, which is my name. They could be from Knoxville, Tennessee, which is where I'm from. That's among the options here. And like the things they do as a child, certainly things I did as a child, like scouts and Legos and stuff. So like these are things that, but for certain things in my life, I could have been down that route as well. So what are the things that I've done in my life or the choices I've made? Were they really choices I made or just things that happened to me randomly? Yeah, and I don't think Lou, it's meant like Lou's comment here say, like all white supremacists can't help it. I mean, it's not meant to trivialize these things, certainly. I don't think it does trivialize these things. I think it just helps us understand the tragedy in a bigger context than we normally think about it. It's even bigger than we normally think about it. So that's why it's so sad as a game to me. Anyway, I'm gonna wrap it up. I've gone over time. Maybe you've already stopped watching, but I should wrap up the stream so I can get this ready to go again for section 2. But thanks for watching, and I'll send some emails and announcement with some links for things to look at and respond to get ready for Monday. If I don't get that together, then it'll just be another kind of me telling you things kind of lecture. So thanks for watching. Hope you all are doing okay. Have a good weekend. Looks like it might snow. I mean, we'll have class anyway because we'll be online. But hopefully we get a little snow. That'll be nice. All right, cool. See you all. Thanks for watching. I'll be online if you want to chat, but I'm going to shut down the stream so I can get ready for the next one. So I'll see you later. Bye.